SportsView is the programme here on Lear FM, learmedia.tv with myself, Pat Barry. Good evening, Joe Waters.
Good evening, Pat.
And Joe's over there in Seattle for our view who might be coming to us for the first time. Don't forget to press the button on the right-hand side, subscribe to our channel, email info@learmedia.tv. All the information is at the bottom of the channel going on there. Now we have maybe one or two people who may be coming in. Now I have a bit of trouble with their Wi-Fi, but if they join us, they join us. But if not, Joe, we'll carry on talking. Whether we make sense now is another thing. I don't know, you know. But,
yeah.
So we'll be looking at soccer, obviously, and with the World Cup around the corner. We'll be looking at rugby, cricket, golf, and Formula One, and a few more things, if we get to all of that, you know. And but to begin with, we'll begin with the Premiership, and of course, I mean, Joe, I know you can see much of the soccer over the weekend. The game that you could not bet on was Brentford and Man City at the Etihad. There's no way you could bet on Brentford to beat Man City, you know.
Yeah, I mean, on a regular Saturday or a regular game day, I'd kind of I'd go along with that. But you know, this last weekend was a pretty unique weekend in terms of what's going on with the World Cup starting next week. And and we've seen players that are dropping out through injury and what have you, unfortunately getting injured just before. And it doesn't surprise me that you would have shock results like that, because City did not look really at the races like they normally do. They weren't at their best. And you know, Ivan Toney scores 2 goals, and of course he has a little bit to prove. He was flying throughout the game, and he had a little bit to prove because he didn't make the England World Cup squad. So in a lot of ways, it was kind of a little bit of a recipe for an upset that could possibly happen, and of course it did happen in the finish. You know.
Yes, of course, and of course, our old team here, Notts Forest, had a good win as well, as did Bournemouth, Liverpool, Spurs, Leicester won one of your clubs. Man U won, of course. Aston Villa, to me, had a surprise win against Brighton, down in Brighton, and then Newcastle and Arsenal, of course, are top of the league. We don't forget that, you know. But Newcastle are looking the part, Joe.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are, and they look the real deal. I mean, they're playing exciting football. They're a young team, so they're able to press and put people under pressure from in their own end. So and Eddie Howe, I've always thought Eddie Howe is a really good manager, and you know, I'd have to wonder if this thing wasn't set up like that in the beginning, because the guy that's the assistant manager there and Eddie Howe's right-hand man there was at Bournemouth with him before.
Well, he was.
And then he came up to be either assistant manager or first team coach with Steve Bruce before Eddie Howe got there. So I don't know if that was like paving the way for that to happen. It just seems too much of a coincidence that came about. And you know, you've got players like Almiron. I've always liked him. I watched him here when he was playing for Atlanta. Very exciting player, and just needed to be adding to his game. I mean, he's a terrific player at beating people and getting into position. Now he's starting to find the back of the net. He's starting to become more cultured, more assured in front of goals when he gets his opportunities. And I'm really happy for him. And then the two guys, the two Brazilians that they have in midfield are two outstanding players. So, and their defense is, I mean, I don't know. I forget now if Dan Burn got chosen to go to the World Cup with England, but you've got Kieran Trippier going as well. So, Nick Pope is going. So they're
Yeah.
a well balanced team with a lot of good players in it.
And some people had said, Joe, suggested that initially when Eddie Howe took the job at Newcastle, well, with the takeover of the club, that some people, and myself included in that now, thought that, well, Eddie Howe will be a stopgap to, to keep Newcastle in the Premiership, and then when the dust is settled, they'll go out in the marketplace for Jose Mourinho type manager, someone like that. But Eddie Howe has proved quietly, with no fuss, no headlines, that he's a good judge of a player. I mean, he ran the Bournemouth team on a wing and a player on a shoestring, and they were always competitive, with Eddie Howe. There are some suggestions in the media that he'll be the next England manager. Who knows? But going at the Premiership at the moment, wouldn't it be absolutely sensational if Newcastle at the end of the season were top of the pile?
Yeah, I mean, it would be. I think, though, realistically, that's a big step for them to take right now. I think that a step to making it into the Champions League, if they're able to do that, or into Europe, that would be a huge step for them. But talking about Eddie Howe, Eddie Howe took Bournemouth from the depths of League Two, which is the fourth division, and Bournemouth played Grimsby on the last day of the season when Grimsby and Bournemouth were close to the bottom as well. Grimsby had to win there to maintain their league status, and they managed to win there. But then Eddie Howe started moving Bournemouth through the divisions. And the only place that he's not been successful really is when he went to Burnley for a little
Yeah,
while.
yeah, and to me, I mean, I'm a big, as you're talking about Burnley, I'm a big fan of Burnley. I'm a big fan of the way they play soccer right now, I'm talking about. And it's no surprise to me that they're doing as well as they are, with my limited knowledge. But I think Burnley, are on the right trajectory, so to speak. Themselves and Sheffield United seem to be, and Norwich probably can rule them out. They seem to be in prime position at the moment for automatic qualification,
Yeah,
And
no, I mean, Burnley are, they were unfortunate, I think. I don't really know what happened with Sean Dyche being let go when they let him go. I think they tied him down to a long-term contract and then fired him within a short period, and then they brought in Vincent Company. Um, but Burnley is a huge football city,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
mean they were winning the league in the 60s and in cup finals in the 60s.
yes, yes,
And then unfortunately, I mean, I remember playing at Turf Moor with Leicester back in 1974, and then I played there again with Grimsby a few years later, and they were always a well supported club. I mean,
yeah.
they've got a great fan base, and they've always managed their money well. They
True,
bought
that's very true.
wisely, and they bought good solid players, and always giving themselves a chance. And one of the things that actually happened to them was maybe got them relegated was when Newcastle of all people triggered the the clause in the centre forward. I forget his name now, but he had a price that if a team met that price, then he could go. And of course, taking him out of the team was like taking 12, 14 goals
Yeah,
out of Newcastle's goals differential kind of thing. And that
yeah.
eventually, I think, ended up hurting them.
But those grounds like Turf Moor and the City Ground, Nottingham Forest, and all, they have a romanticism still about them for soccer lovers, really. That's why I love to see those teams making an impression. and making a fist of getting up to the Premiership. Despite despite the money isn't everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the traditions in English soccer, and I don't have to point that out to you, Joe, that are simply lost in the business model they have now for soccer in general.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's traditional clubs. You talked about Sheffield United. I remember playing at Bramall Lane when they had the cricket ground there as well. The same thing at Northampton when they had the cricket ground there. Playing at Sheffield Wednesday. Um, and just a lot of those grounds had just great atmosphere because the crowd was right on top of you, and it always seemed to be cold up there and miserable, and you were kicking against the wind going both ways. It felt like, but it was a great experience to play at those places, and people really loved their football.
The program is SportsView on nearmedia.tv. Press the red button on the right hand side to subscribe to our channel and tell all your friends about us and share the program with everybody else. And encourage your friends to share it as well. And Joe Waters is my panelist tonight. Well, I know there's one or two trying to get in, but we'll see later on how they'll do anyway. Also, I suppose, Joe, we have to mention Ronaldo is after giving an interview to Talk TV to Piers Morgan, and he's talking a lot about this. We saw some snippets shared on the news. Obviously, look, let's call a spade a spade. He's gone from Man United now. I mean, that's the book shut on Ronaldo. What he's going to do next, we don't know, but his focus will be on the World Cup, now, and it's a pity in a way for someone to finish like that, his career like that in a sour note, and I'm just saying that some of the comments he made, obviously he's hurting a lot as a soccer player, so we have to appreciate that as well. What do you think of the whole lot, Joe, yourself?
I mean, obviously, in my opinion, there's no way back for him at United. You just don't come out and air your dirty laundry in public. It's just not done. If you've got things to say, there's a dressing room for him to be said in, or there's a manager's office for it to be said in. If you have differences, then you sort it out with those two. To me, it seems like it seems a little bit petulant to go and do this. It seemed to me to lack a bit of courage doing it now when he's going to be gone for the next 5 weeks to the World Cup. So he doesn't have to face the flack of it. He's leaving the club with that to deal with. And if he does have to deal with it, then he's selfishly bringing that to the Portuguese team with him. And of course, he's got Bruno Fernandes with him there as well.
Yes.
So it just seemed there were other ways to sort this out. And I saw that this morning that in the paper, Graham Souness said, well, he's entitled to air his problems. Graham Souness, if he did that when he was at Liverpool, he would have been pinned up against the wall by 2 or 3 guys. And he knows that full well. If we have anything to sort out, we do it behind closed doors.
Exactly.
I mean, for years and years, everyone knew that Tommy Smith and Emlyn Hughes didn't get along. They hated each other. And in fact, Ron Harris tackled Emlyn Hughes one day in a Liverpool-Chelsea game, and he just absolutely clattered him. And Emlyn Hughes is writhing around on the ground, and Tommy Smith ran up and he said, Harris, I could get to like you, because he just walloped Hughes. So, but nobody ever knew that.
That's a funny story.
Then a few people in the dressing room, and it never affected them when they played for Liverpool. I mean, it certainly didn't affect them when we played them in the semi-final of the Cup in '74. So you just don't air things like that in public. You keep them. And I mean, if you want to leave, like obviously he thinks he wants to leave. Um, the sad fact is that he's not able to get into the United team on merit. That is
No,
passed him by. Younger players are now starting to make an impression and starting to make a claim, and that's got to be very hard for him to take. But by the same token, he did the same thing when he was a young player. He came in and he took somebody else's spot. So it's just the way that things go in the game. That time catches up with everybody in the game,
true.
and you just have to accept it and move on gracefully, which this certainly is not.
No, and the proof of the pudding is that we are talking about it ourselves tonight, Joe, the story itself. But I just wonder how much money he got for doing the interview because really it doesn't do him any service. In fact, it takes away somewhat from his legacy because he's been one of the most outstanding soccer players over the last 20 years. There's no doubt about that, you know?
Yeah. Oh yes, he has. I mean, he's been absolutely brilliant. He's had a brilliant career. There's nobody can argue with that. I mean, but it happens to everybody. In the finish, it just time just catches up. And the thing with me is that I can't stand Piers Morgan. I have no time for him whatsoever. I think he's a user. I think he's a chancer.
Yeah, I
I
agree
don't
with
I
you.
don't have any time for him, and to give him the interview even makes it more. Uh, yeah, for me, I just don't like it.
Well, another match over the weekend, Joe, which really caught my eye. I watched the highlights of it. Was I must say we've often been critical and negative against Spurs, but that was a sensational match they played over the weekend against Leeds United. To win it 4-3. I mean, none of the two teams deserve to lose it, but there you go.
Well, yeah, I mean it's 7 goals, and Leeds United always for the last few years seem to make every game interesting. They make it exciting, and it doesn't surprise me that Spurs scored a few goals against them. But the thing that does surprise me is that they gave up 3 goals against Leeds. But Leeds are a very, very young, energetic team, and they get at you. And they get at you in a big way. They put you under pressure all over the field. These guys, I think, probably run maybe the most distances in football games when they're tracked, and it I mean it's great to see. I mean it's great to see. Conte must be tearing his hair out, being in a 7 goal thriller. He doesn't like that. He likes them 1-0 and let's go home. So.
Yeah, oh yeah. But at least they got the 3 points and they're still maintaining their position in the top 4 or 5. That's Spurs and Newcastle, as we said, and Arsenal. Arsenal to me had another comfortable win with a manager who has found his stride as a manager. By every interview I'm looking at Arteta, and you can see how he's really blossomed and prospered in his role as manager of Arsenal.
Yes, he has. And he's done it his own way. He's done it the way that he wants to do it. He's again, people can say what they want about Aubameyang and how he treated him, but if you're trying to set a culture the same way that Eric Ten Hag is trying to set a culture at Manchester United, if you have your best players walking out, not refusing to go on the field and then walking out before the game is over, or like Aubameyang being late to training every day and what have you, and just setting a poor example for the young group, then you have to get rid of him. I mean, that was one of the things that Sir Alex Ferguson said about Eric Cantona, and all the boys that played with him said the same thing. Eric Cantona was the hardest trainer at Manchester United. When official training was done, he stayed behind and he worked on things on his own that he felt he needed to work on to make him a better player, and that led to the other players, the likes of David Beckham and guys like that, staying behind and wanting to do extra as well. So if you're going to have a culture at a club, if the top veterans don't buy into it, then they have to leave.
That's true, and as you said, Ten Hag is trying to build that culture now that you're talking about in the club. Now they're not a settled team yet, but at least there's some bit of consistency. Talking about 7 goal thrillers, I have to mention, Joe, on a personal level, I was at my son's junior soccer match yesterday morning, and for my sons, and they lost, unfortunately, in a 7 goal thriller as well. That's Bunratty Cracklow against Avenue, and they lost in a 7 goal thriller. But my son scored the goal, so his pocket money is secured for the week. Well done to that, and all the junior soccer players in Clare and Limerick who turned out over the weekend. It was a very inclement weather for some of them, but they did well. We'll also, I suppose, there's a break now in the Premiership and in Cross Channel for the next 4 or 5 weeks. And we'll come back there in a sec, Joe, to the World Cup as a separate item. But just a few little bits and pieces. Pádraig Harrington, good old Pádraig, he won the Charles Schwab over the weekend. He won, how much did he win? He won $440,000 for his trouble. He's an incredible man to be still doing it. 52, I think he is now, is it?
Yeah.
52 or something like that.
I think
He won
it is.
Yeah, and minus 27 for his 4 rounds. 64, 64, 62, and 65. That's some form in it for himself, you know.
Well,
And
he played. He actually played great last week as well, and he was hurting last week. I think he had a bad back, or he had something going on. There was a muscle that was giving him problem, and I think on the 18th hole he hit an unbelievable shot to put himself back in contention for the overall Charles Schwab thing, and then to go out and do what he did yesterday or over the weekend was absolutely fantastic. That's an amazing achievement.
that's fantastic. And
You know, you looked as well. Bernard Langer is only, I think, one off of Hale Irwin for the Senior Open, or for the senior on the senior tour, for the amount of tournaments that he's won.
that's
And
right. And he was in the field. And
Yeah, I think he's
Nick,
68. He's been shooting his age a couple of times. So
it was great to see some of the old fellas around the place. Kurt Triplett, Alex Checker, Miguel Angel Jimenez. Great to see him again on the thing. Darren Clark finished, I think, in -4 or something like that. But great to see them all out enjoying themselves, what they should be. But in the women's Pelican tournament, Nelly Corder came back to form again, and she edged out my favourite lady golfer outside of Leona Maguire is Lexi Thompson. I think she's a fantastic person on the course, you know, and she has this aura and flamboyance about her, you know. She's very engaged. She's very engaging. That's the word, you know. And I think she's anyway. Nelly Corder won that, and Leona Maguire finished at -7, just 7 shots off the lead, but she finished in the top 10. So those points are very important to her. Will be Tony Canoe won the Houston Open, and to finish with golf, Tommy Fleetwood won the Ned Beck Challenge in South Africa, which is sponsored and run by Gary Player. So Gary is still going strong. So he must be over 90 years of age, see?
who's that?
Gary Player.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'd say he is.
He has to be. I mean, he has to be right up there.
One of my researchers might look up the age of Gary Player later on. I have 2 researchers with me tonight, Joe.
Oh, there you go. We're going big time.
We're moving up in the world, you know. And, well, young Russell from England won the Interlagos Grand Prix in Brazil, and he's going very well, you know. And Hamilton was second behind him. Both Mercedes 1 and 2, so they're back to form. The Irish ladies won the one-day T20 International against Pakistan in the cricket, so that was a surprise, really. England's men's team won the World Cup. They beat Pakistan in the final of the one-day T20 cricket, you know, over down Australia. So that was a very good result for England, you know. Well, at the start of the tournament, they weren't up there for the favourites. You had Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan, India. You had a good few teams, ahead of them, but they stepped up to the plate, so to speak, and they did the business, for themselves. Now, when we sit down to talk, we asked the question, what was your favourite team, World Cup winning team? So it's a bit unfair because, it's very hard to compare, 58 with 78 and 98. It's unfair, but you have memories much the same as I would have, Joe, of the World Cup, and obviously you surely had one or two favorite teams. You were saying to yourself, God, I'd watch them every night if they were playing that team, or a particular team or a few players. I'm thinking of people like Mario Kempes with Argentina. Wasn't he just a sensational player?
Yes, he was. I mean, it was absolutely tremendous player. I have a few teams that I kind of I really enjoyed watching. The Brazil team in 1970
Oh yeah.
Was a fantastic team. I remember watching the final with my mother and father up in Jerry O'Dee's and what was the lounge before they did all the work on
Extension.
it
Yeah.
and expanded it. And we watched the final up there. And then there was of course the Argentinian team, the 70, was it 74?
78.
78 Argentinian team was very good. But then, the Dutch team that lost to Germany and to Argentina was a brilliant team.
Oh.
I've watched the Hungarian teams of Puskás and those guys, and of course I wasn't old enough to understand what it was back then, but I saw the movies afterwards. In fact, my first memory is of Eintracht Frankfurt and Real Madrid at Hampden Park in the European Cup final. And I think that what was the score? Was it 6-2 or 5-3 or something like that? And I just remember watching it. We were Pike Rovers.
Was that in the late 60s? Huh? Oh.
That was, yeah, it would have been somewhere in the 60s, maybe early 60s, when Real were going through that great period.
Yeah.
And the Pike Rovers used to get the films. It was reel to reel in those days.
Yeah.
And they were showing it down in downtown in Limerick in one of the venues that they were able to get.
Yeah.
And the place was full watching the game. I mean, that was just fascinating to me to watch that. And so I saw those guys. Of course, the '66 World Cup, and the '66 World Cup was great just because back in those days we supported whichever home country was involved.
Exactly.
And I always thought that was the way to do it. If we're not there, then it's somebody we know is there, and at least we can cheer for them. So that was great watching the '66 World Cup. But there've been some memorable players. The Italian team with Rossi when he came back and scored all those goals, and of course that great Brazilian team that had Zico in it that unfortunately didn't win it, but were an absolute fantastic team. And I still remember that. Was it the corner kick that they scored from, and Clive Thomas blew the whistle?
That's right.
Yeah, so it was
Clive Thomas. Yeah, Clive Thomas. Yeah, you're right. He blew the whistle. He didn't allow the goal.
Yeah.
Directly from the corner, and so that's history for poor old Clive Thomas. He was a good referee, but he'll be only remembered for that,
Oh,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
His name is mentioned, but you mentioned. My favorite team. I decided I'd pick one, and you mentioned it yourself. England were the holders in 1970 because they had won it in '66. They were the holders. going to Mexico. Mexico wasn't Mexico City, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mexico? Yeah, because they had the Olympics in Mexico in '68. They had the World Cup in '70, and that Brazilian team were just sensational. They beat Italy in the final, a fantastic Italian team, but they beat them. They took them apart. They beat them 4-1. And Carlos Alberto's goal, when he scored the fourth goal, is considered one of the top 5 goals of all time in World Cup finals. I was reading about it, so I know that I was reading about it today. But you had Everaldo in goals, Joe, in that team. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And
Wasn't the goalkeeper for that team Felix?
sorry, Felix. I beg your pardon. You had Felix in goals, and the back four. So it was Everaldo, Piazza, Brito, and Carlos Alberto. Alberto was the back four. Then you had, remember, Revellino, Gerson,
Oh yeah.
Gersino, and
I have
Pele up
Rivellino's
front.
number 10 jersey.
Yeah.
I have his Brazilian number 10 jersey in my trophy
Whose
case
jersey?
downstairs.
Whose jersey is that?
Rivellino.
Well, have you?
Yeah, we went to Brazil, Chile, and Uruguay in 1974.
Yeah.
We played them at the Maracana. I was just a young fella making up the numbers, but after the game, I went to the dressing room and got swap jerseys, and I get this thing out and it's soaking wet, and I'm going, oh, I don't want this, and of course I unfold it and it's number 10, and Rivellino had worn it that day. So
have you it framed?
It's in my. I haven't framed it, but it's in my. It's in. My wife bought me a little cabinet that, and I didn't do like a lot of people do, where they hang them up in frames and stuff like that. The ones that I have from my international days are all in that little glass cabinet that is downstairs.
Yeah, there for your grandkids to enjoy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and they'll probably wash the windows with it.
I think the 1970 World Cup was the first World Cup to be certainly to be watched in colour in Ireland. Anyway, I can tell you that. That's why I think that yellow jersey of Brazil became synonymous with pure soccer, so to speak. And that team, to me, were just, in my opinion, apart from, well, I put the Argentinian team of the one with in '82 with Maradona, a close second to them. They were superb as well, you know.
Yes, that was a very good team as well. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, those teams, and the Italian team you mentioned as well with Roberto Baggio, and those people. They were very good as well, you know. But we're looking forward to the World Cup now, Joe. Next Sunday night there will be the opening game between Ecuador and Qatar in the World Cup. Obviously, we don't know. I don't know how well Ecuador are going myself. You know, I haven't been following them that much. You know, I've only seen one or two of their games on television. But then next Monday, there are 3 games on every day. This is Irish channel for people watching this. So next Monday, the 21st of November, my goodness, at 1 o'clock in the day, 1300 hours, you have England playing Iran at 1 o'clock our time. And then at 4 o'clock, you have the Netherlands playing Senegal. That has the makings of a good match. I hope Sadio Mane will be fit enough to play, because that'll be a good match. And then the evening match at 1900 hours is the USA versus Wales next Monday. They're three decent games, actually, you know.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are. And I mean, Ecuador will be a decent team. You know, I mean, I think they're in that South American group with Brazil, Uruguay, Chile, Argentina. You know, so they're kind of Peru. So it's going to be real interesting. It's going to be a really interesting World Cup, I think. It really is. I mean, with so many players now, from all of these countries that we wouldn't necessarily have heard about before, but all these players now that are playing in the top leagues around the world, you know, it's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be, I think, a lot more competitive than we've seen. You
Well,
know, and
the usual suspects I mentioned, obviously, for winning. You have Brazil, France, Spain, and Portugal, an outside chance, Netherlands, Germany. All the usual teams they're all mentioned. There doesn't seem to be any surprise team coming out of the pack, so to speak. But you don't know, Joe, because of the weather as well. You don't know how well some players will acclimatise to the country as well. So you don't know how teams will be that way. There's 32 teams, obviously, this year in it, for 32 teams, which seems a lot, you know. 8 groups of 4, and I don't know how England will go, but they'll be playing the first. You know, a quirky thing of their first match. They're playing Iran in their first match, and the Iranian crest on their jersey is IRA, which is Iranian Association, IRA. You know, so you can
yeah,
imagine there'll be there'll be some there'll be some snagging over that anyway. You know, it's unfortunate.
oh yeah, yeah,
But the Netherlands, I don't know how they're going to go against Senegal. I know how the Netherlands are going to go. But as you said, that 74 and 78 team were outstanding. Was it the first time we had a set of twins playing for the Netherlands Holland that time? The Van de Kerkhoff twins. Do you remember them?
yeah, yeah.
They were playing for the Netherlands. I think it's the only time ever you had a set of twins playing for a national team, as far as I can tell.
To be honest, I have never
Yeah.
I've never heard of anybody. I mean, of course, we had the Charlton brothers played for England, but they weren't twins.
No, they weren't
You know,
twins. They were brothers.
so
Yeah, lots of brothers, but
yeah,
twins. I think twins are unique. I think myself. You know,
oh
and
yeah, and for
of
two
course,
of them to be that class that they're able to play for in a World Cup final is amazing. You
it
know,
is.
so
Yeah, it is fantastic. And have you yourself make an assessment of how you think things will go there, football wise, and emerging or so-called favourites to win out the whole thing?
well, it's going to be really interesting to be honest, because you know normally you have like the biggest things that coaches ran into when preparing for the World Cup in the past, and we had the same thing when Jack took us to the World Cup in Italy, and then when we went to South was it Japan, Korea with Mick, was you had 5 or 6 weeks to prepare, and the boredom that happens in that period is a huge obstacle in that. Guys start to get cabin fever and what have you, and sometimes they do daft things, and this is going to be really interesting because of the lack of preparation time that they have. I mean, they've got less than, with travel and everything, they've probably got less than a week together to prepare for this and get ready for it. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how it is. Brazil are already getting questioned about what players they left off the squad, because they've got so many, and
That's true.
it's going to be really interesting. There is definitely going to be a surprise team.
Do you think, Joel? Do you think that team, if there's a surprise team, and I'm not slagging them at all, do you think England could be a surprise team in the World Cup? In all fairness, I mean they have enough football in them to make a dent in anything.
Yes, they do. I mean, they do. England's biggest problem is and you were talking about it there earlier in a different sport, in cricket. What stood to the T20 guys was that there was no pressure on them going into it because they didn't
Yes.
think that they were any good and they had any chance of it. and they got a poor start, so it just cemented everybody's thoughts that they're not going to be.
That's right, Joe. Ireland beat them.
Yeah. So I mean, so you go in and all of a sudden all this, you've dampened everything and it's all been put down. Um, uh, but the problem with the football side of the country is that they all think that it's their God-given right to win it, and the press, it's more the press than it is anybody else that are are the ones that push this and what have you, and they jump on the bandwagon of it, and then of course as soon as things go wrong, then Gareth Southgate will be the worst thing in the world uh, for what he didn't do. He'd be second guessed out the door. I mean, he's been unfortunate with injuries to a couple of his defenders that would have normally gone with him. But the attacking players that he's brought in James Maddison, which I think is a great move. Maddison, I think, is a fantastic player and will fit right in with that group. So they have got the tools to do very well. The only problem that you have with England, I hope it doesn't happen like it happened to them in the Euros when they played in England, is that they get to the latter stages and then they go back into their shell and they don't play the attacking way that they played building up to that.
Do you think that their manager has that respect, not respect, but that manager has that standing to instill that no holds barred type of thing on that team? Do you think his demeanor befits that, or do you think that he'd be somewhat deficient in that?
No, I think that he's. I think he's a good manager. I think he's done things. He's got the things set up the way he wants it set up. He's got them pretty solid defensively. Sometimes he can be, to be honest, I don't think that anybody ever thought that some of the attacking players that he put in there at the end were going to go with him to this World Cup. And he had everybody fooled. So I think that he's got a great coach with him. And I think that they have the knowledge. I mean, you have to remember, he played in the World Cup himself. He has the experience, the heartbreak of missing the penalty.
Joe, I forgot to look up before we came on here. Is Maguire the captain?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is Maguire the captain?
I don't know what the deal is with that right now, because he hasn't been playing. So,
but he's still the captain of the English team.
Yes, he has, and
I mean, he will start. He will start in that match against Iran.
I would imagine that he probably will.
He will.
Him and Dyer probably will start. Now that are Stones maybe, but Maguire and Dyer in the same back three or back five, whatever it is he's going to play with it, or a back four if he does that. There is not a lot of pace in the middle of the back four with those two playing there. Yeah.
We're not going to start now yet until next week.
Yeah,
but
right.
In fairness now to Harry Maguire, I mean, I know I mentioned because I know he's still the captain of England because we know he hasn't lost that, and I think maybe that issue with being captain of England, maybe it might instill a new sense of purpose and confidence in the player because, look, he deserves some criticism, but he doesn't deserve the vindication that he's been meted out to him in the press, in fairness,
Well, no, and of course, it's the usual thing. It's because he's the Manchester United captain and he cost a lot of money. He didn't decide how much his transfer fee was going to be.
No, not at all.
Other people did that. And he's unfortunately left with the tag hanging around his neck. He's this, that, and the other. If he was playing for a lesser team, maybe he wouldn't be going through this. I always think back to the story that Jack Charlton told about Alf Ramsey when he was at the World Cup in '66, and Jack was kind of a bit of a surprise to be playing.
He
And
was.
Jack said to Alf one day, he said, "Alf, I want to thank you uh, for uh, for having me here." And he says, "What do you mean, Jack?" He says, "Well, I want to thank you for thinking I am the best centre half in England." And Alf looked at me and he said, "Jack, I never said you were the best centre half in England. What I said, you're the best centre half for this team.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying." And
There you
that
go.
and Jack went, "Oh, okay." So, but that's the thing with it, you know. You build a team on what you want, you know.
Exactly.
And when you've got Bobby
Absolutely.
Moore playing next to you and Nobby Styles in front of you, um, cleaning everything up and stopping it getting through to you, and you just go and win the headers and the tackles you're supposed to win, then you can be very, very effective. And I hope that Harry Maguire can do that.
Yes, I mean we wish him well. We wish Maguire and all the English team the success in the World Cup, and hope, and like all other teams going there, that they can play to their ability. And after that, it's a question of luck and a question of decisions. But once they play up to their ability, that's all a manager and a country will need on their team. You know. Before we finish up, Joe, our friend was over in Germany the weekend, Tom Brady,
Yes,
and
he was.
were you reading about him?
Oh, I watched the game.
Did you watch the game?
I did, yeah. He's not a very popular man in Seattle right now, Tom Brady. So,
Why?
well, it was the Seahawks that they played in Germany.
Oh,
So,
sorry, yeah, you're
yeah,
right. Yeah, the
so yeah,
Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, your home team.
so they popped our balloon a little bit for us, but no, it was great, and the everything they talked about that happened over there, the experience, the whole how everybody in Germany embraced it and what have you, was they said it was an absolutely outstanding event, and they'll be going back again. I mean, they want to go back again.
All the reports were just fantastic, and it turned out, as you said, to be a spectacle, to be everything that's good about the NFL, the traditions and all. But I was happy for Brady because they have a 5 loss and a 5 win record out of their 10 games, I think. So they need to win their. I think he was saying they need to win their next 3 games, and it should see them into the latter stages. But that's good way off yet. You know, they haven't been consistent. That's what I'm trying to say. The
Well,
Tampa Bay, but
the whole division though has not been consistent that they're in. So
yeah,
they could quite easily end up winning that division with uh,
they
what
could.
a
I
nine
was
and
looking.
five
Yeah,
record or whatever, 9-7 record.
yeah.
I think it's 16 games that they play, and then they could end up in second place also, and they'll go through. So it's kind of they have a chance. I mean,
They have.
they always have a chance, and with him, you know, and he's just coming into a little bit better form now. He's
He
starting to.
is. I was looking at the table, as you said. I was looking at the table myself just there after dinner, and I saw, as you said, they're 5-5. But they have 6 more games to go, obviously. But as you said, they could win that because there is no team running away with it. There's no
No,
team running away with it, you know. So, on a given day, well, you don't know. I mean, could we wish for another Super Bowl ring for Tom? I don't know. It's a long ways off, but it's a
it's
long ways
that.
off.
Yeah, it is a
So
long way off.
you'll be watching the World Cup, Joe, no doubt next week, as I will, as we all will, and we'll have a World Cup special next Monday night. I think our time here. What's our time here? 7 o'clock here is what I don't know. What time is it over where you are now?
It is. What time is it now? Let me look. It's 10 to 1 my time.
10 to 1. So yeah, 10 to 1 and or 10 to 7. Yeah, we'll be halfway through the third batch, fourth batch. So what harm? We can keep an eye on it. But from this edition of SportsView, from Joe Waters in Seattle, Joe, we'll be watching now next week for the spectacle. I don't know who's performing the opening ceremony because you've got a load of people who are mentioned have said they will not be going. Rod Stewart was the latest today. He said, no, I would not perform there. Robbie Williams didn't say yes or no, so they're running down all the people who are, it's a secret. Who? I know one of my researchers here said some name that doesn't mean anything to me. Dua Lipa, Joe.
No,
No.
no,
So
not me either.
no, I didn't. And just as we mentioned, there's a picture of the 1970 Brazilian team, the World Cup winning team, put up for since we were talking about him. A wonderful picture of Pele, and I hope he's doing well. I hope because he's hadn't been in good health lately, But the Jules Rimet Trophy in his hands. But Joe, from this edition of Sports, you to meet again next week. Take care and good luck and good soccer and good footballing until we meet again, Joe. Good night.
Thanks, bye. Take care, everybody. Bye.